Hello and welcome to another episode of Agri Art. For the longest time, farmers have been fighting a long-standing war against weeds in order to maximize yield and feed the local population. Nonetheless, several weed species in certain instances exhibit beneficial properties to a specific ecosystem, such as ecosystem services, a means of pest control, and a means of improving soil fertility. Within Europe, various species of plant have a long history, both cultural and medicinal. And within the continent of Europe, several species of plant that have a long and storied history within European culture are rapidly declining in population due to their status as weeds. As a consequence, several projects created by the EU member states were implemented to protect such species. An example of such a project would be the creation of refuge locations, where these species are allowed to grow unencumbered. In Hungary, three iconic species are on the decline. These include the corn poppy, the field larkspur, and the cornflower. These three species mentioned were first introduced into Europe sometime around the Copper Age, and remained popular within gardens until early modern times. Whilst the corn poppy was a species of concern, this species is still relatively common, thanks to the longevity of the seeds within the soil. Indeed, the species may make a comeback as herbicide-resistant populations have evolved, a blessing to an anthropologist and a ecologist, and a bane to farmers. The common cornflower, however, is now on the endangered species list within every European country as a threatened species. The common cornflower is right now a flagship species within all EU member states, with every member state working to protect the species from extinction. Within the Carpathian Basin, the cornflower has only spotty distribution, and that population is still on the decline. The larkspur, although not as widely distributed as it was before, is still stable as a population. The researcher Dr. Gayula Pink utilized a long series of texts, both ancient and contemporary, to fully lay out the cultural history and cultural utilization of these three species in hopes of aiding in the protection of these species. And here are the results. On a medicinal end, the first written records were created between the 16th and 17th centuries and only concerned the corn poppy. This species was used to treat a broad number of health problems, including insomnia, gum diseases, intestinal pain, ergot poisoning, and bleeding. By the 18th century, this plant was considered a panacea and was used to treat breathing problems and to put babies to sleep. The Hungarian name for the poppy is pipax. It is said that this name is derived from the peep-peep sound that babies made when they passed out after consuming the poppy extract. The larkspur was first written about in a medical context in the 18th century. It was used to treat nosebleeds, with later writing expanding the use to treat all forms of bleeding. The common cornflower has been used to treat eye inflammation since the 18th century, and remained the primary method to treat such inflammation until the mid-20th century. During this time period, it is also used as a diuretic and a means of managing heart palpitations. These three species were commonly gathered and sold to make medicine, a process that remained in play until the 1960s, when new commercial medicines replaced the old folk medicines. Although these species no longer have medical use, they are still utilized for the beauty industry, mostly for face cream manufacturing. There are only a few records of Hungarian literature mentioning that the studied species were directly consumed as food items. The corn poppy was eaten as a famine food during the 19th century, and consumption was increased during the 20th century. The popularity of the poppy as a food source may have been an import from the nations of Styria and Carinthia, both of which consumed poppy buds as a staple crop. The common larkspur was used as a food dye. The extract was an ingredient to make both green and blue food dyes. The cornflower was utilized to make wine and flavor beer and vinegar. It was also utilized to make a gray-blue dye. All the species were utilized in beekeeping operations as a source of nectar. The poppy and the cornflower were also utilized as fodder crops for sheep, although the poppy did on occasion sicken or kill a sheep or two. Hello, I just want to let you know, if you want to fund this channel, you can do so on the platforms seen in the description below. The first written evidence of the use of larkspur and cornflower as garden plant comes across in the 17th century, but there is tangential evidence that a species was cultivated in the 11th to 12th centuries. These species continue to be cultivated, although in a declining rate, in the 19th century, and the population began to fall in the 20th century. Outside of common cultivation, these species are harvested and utilized for harvest festivals and wreath making. These species are also utilized in various religious ceremonies such as the Feast of Corpus Christi, which is celebrated 2 months after Easter. In this ritual, the priests are followed by children throwing poppy petals as Holy Communion is given out. Another celebration involves the celebration of the birth of John the Baptist, and these species are likewise used in the ornamentation of this ceremony, especially larkspur and cornflower. These species are also the basis for various forms of dress-up, nursery rhyme, wreath, and doll making among the children of Hungary. From a high art perspective, the cornflower is one of the chief species depicted in the artwork of the church, followed by the poppy. These two species have been utilized since the 18th and 17th centuries respectively. Both species found their way into common household depictions and artwork, such as embroidery, during the 19th century. In modern times, the cornflower is also one of the most popular motifs in popular high-end product lines of Hungarian porcelain manufacturer. All three species are often featured on hand-painted ceramics as well. The cornflower and poppy were also popular elements of the Hungarian Art Nouveau era at the turn of the 20th century. These species also found their way into various pieces of Hungarian literature and were also depicted on stamps, funerary rites, and other civic symbols. After World War I, the poppy became the symbol of Remembrance Day, which is still attended within Europe, the UK, and much of the Commonwealth. From the age of monarchy, and even during the worst parts of Hungarian history such as the communist era, these three species remain primary symbols within Hungary. We'll conclude this video by going through a list of slides showcasing all the medical and historical uses of the species. All the above images were obtained from the same paper, as well as all the tables, linked in the description below.